all of this is crazy making stuff. Makes you feel like you're going nuts. I know it's weird because our stories are different. The context is all, the specifics are all different. But then you look at but in the bigger picture, it's all the same. I mean, everything he was talking about, I felt going through my situation. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't understand how people didn't see it. When the smear campaign was under full force, it just was crazy. And then you get paranoid and you feel like, okay, you gotta watch everybody. You can't trust everybody. I mean, cause like even use the scenario that he was talking about with the nanny should be, like the mediator was saying, oh, this is a good thing. You should say, why wouldn't you take it? Then that's what I see some people saying, they are professional manipulators. It's the number one skill they have. And it is. They're able to take a situation and spin it around to where it's a classic double bind. You say no to something, like in that situation, we'll just use the nanny thing as an example, and you look like, well, what's wrong with you? What, are you paranoid? And I'll tell you, people in our situation, if you go to a therapist and when they're doing their little intake and they're asking questions and they ask the question, well, do you think everyone's out to get you? And if you say yes, there's a little criteria in that little book of theirs that starts leading them down a different path. They don't necessarily, the good ones, which there aren't a lot of them, but the good ones will see it and go, okay, what's the root cause of this? Has this person always been this way or is it something new? And I fortunately, I kind of realized that. So when that question came up and I'm like, a lot of bad things are happening, but I don't think the world is out to get me. I don't understand what's happening with the ex. I don't understand how she's able to turn people. I didn't know about flying monkeys and stuff back then. I'm like, I don't understand how I'm getting into this mode, but I don't feel like people are, the world's against me. But here's the reality. At the time, I felt like the world was against me. I had my ex turned on me. I had, people who were mutual acquaintance turn. I was having problems at work. It was like everything was turning into a pile of crap. Which rolls back into the conversation earlier this week about anxiety and panic attacks, and it all feeds into that. And somebody watching you externally is going to think, oh my God, this person is out of control. And and in effect, we are out of control. We're being spun out of control by design. By design. That's the whole purpose of all this, is to ruin our own credibility, to undermine ourselves, to make it to where people won't believe you because you look unhinged. The easiest way really to turn the tide on this, and it's not easy, but it would be to take those same traits and flip it back around. Be that charming person, be that manipulative person. And even if you can do it for a little bit, and they get, if you have your adversary who's, up here on Mount High, thinking everything is spectacular, and we're generally down here, well, you start playing their game and allowing them to effectively undermine themselves. Most of the time, not always, depending on how good they are at this, most of the time, they start losing their mind because they're like, wait a minute, why are people not believing me? This guy, I know when I push the button, when I go, boop, push the button, the reaction is this. This is what they're supposed to do. But you do this. Now, what I'll also mention or remind everybody is when they do that, oftentimes what will happen is they'll push the button, they'll go, boop, like I just said. They'll push the button. They'll expect you to follow the script that you've done 9 million times before. And when you don't, they still act as if you did. I've seen that. I've seen that in my own situation. I've seen it countless in other people where they turn around and they do that. They don't take the bait. They realize what the person is trying to get them to do and then do something different. They will still follow their script on what they expected you to do. Now, and sometimes what happens is people don't even see it. They don't recognize what you did or what your reactions were. So they just still assume you did the other thing. This is also rolls into an important part about this whenever you're dealing with your kids. whenever they've been conditioned that you act a certain way because they lived with you, they've seen some of these things, and then they're being manipulated about, oh, how it's so sad that, when your dad is tired or not tired, they won't give an excuse. It's just so sad that your dad just doesn't understand you. It's just, I remember having a conversation with my ex. This was on the phone, one of the last few times that we actually would talk. And that's what I got from her. It was just like, it's just so sad. All I ever wanted was you and our son to have a good conversation. That was all I ever wanted. And I'm like, knock it off. You are the only person saying this. The therapist, the psychiatrist, because the kids also were seeing psychiatrists, which is annoying, but whatever, all think you're full of crap. What? I'm like, knock it off. You're the only one saying it. You're trying to drill this into your kid's head that he and I have a problem. Stop it. Oh. It's just, and that's what they do. They plant these stories and they're just like, and who would not listen to a woman saying that? And this is the hard part about this, right? Because there's people on this show right now who are experiencing this on the other side. You have men on here who are dying for a relationship with their kids. And then you have women who are like on here going, God, I wish my ex would give well, I'm not going to use her name, but the person who called in last week, where their kid, they had to send their kid from the East Coast to the West Coast because their ex was playing a game threatening, well, I'm going to say you're kidnapping the kid because you're not letting me have my visitation. So you got a person like her who's like, can this guy just give a damn? And they don't. And then the problem is on the flip side, you see someone else. You see, like in my situation, is somebody who runs in my ex, and she's sitting there and she's like, oh, I just, all I ever wanted was my kids to have a good relationship with their dad. I've tried so hard for him to be in their lives, and he's just such a narcissistic, a-hole. Why would someone not believe that unless they know me? And that's the problem with it. Most people aren't going to sit there, especially when someone's being vulnerable like that, and say, well, tell me more. Give me some more details. Well, what have you tried to do to help the relationship? Now, and even if they had done that, be like, well, the kids are in therapy and I'm encouraging, them to talk. And he can talk to the therapist anytime. Is she going to say that she's not even taking the kids to therapy, that I'm doing it now? There was a time where she was doing it, but then she stopped. No, they control the story. Well, people wonder how these narcissistic people are able to recruit flying monkeys. It's because they're lying to them and they're playing a part and they're tugging on those emotional strings. They're playing a game with people to try to get them to be on team narc, team psycho. And then you come in and if you are frustrated, because you have every right to be frustrated, and you start explaining it in that frustrated mode, you know what happens? You look like you're the unhinged one. You look like the person who's out of touch with reality. It's like you have to come in and even do it the same way and go, I was really hoping for us to be able to co-parent the kids. We've tried so many different things. We use, I've tried to use Our Family Wizard, our Talking Parents. If you guys aren't familiar, those are online tools that are accepted by most courts for this. And that's what you have to do. You have to do it in a calm way. It's like you have to put on your performance. And that's really hard to do whenever you're being basically hit by a bat all the time. But you have to remain calm. But the reality is, if you're able to do that, if you're able to flip the script on that, most of the time they lose their mind and they start showing their true colors. And I hope that channels like mine can give people that aha moment to understand what they're dealing with, to see through to understand the game. I hate to call it a game, but it's a freaking game. And there's rules and there's techniques, and there's ways it's done. And if you don't learn what you're dealing with, and you don't modify your approach, you're gonna lose. If you've never played chess before in your life, and you sit down with me, and I don't tell you the rules, I only tell you the rules whenever you grab the piece and you move it. And I go, oh no, you can't you can't move that piece like that. What? No, it only goes, it can only go forward. Oh, okay. And the next piece, you move the bishop and you move it forward. Oh no, you can't do that. It only goes sideways. What? It's one of those things where you don't know the rules. So you're being undermined at the same time. Can you win? Yeah, you can, depending on how good or how bad the person is. I don't mean by person as in the type of person they are, but their skill level. Hopefully you can get to the point where you're playing checkers and the other person is playing, or you're playing chess and the other person is playing checkers. It's a frustrating situation. But you have to figure out what you're dealing with. You have to believe what you're dealing with, right? Take that caller. What he needs to do is he needs to basically latch on to absolute thinking and say, okay, the X is a diabolical, narcissistic, NPD, probably dark triad person. What are the traits? Look at them and go. And what will happen is you'll look at the traits and you'll go, holy hell, I'm in deep crap. Because a person like that will spare nothing to destroy you. But when you understand it, you can start to predict what they're going to do. You can start to understand how they're going to play the game. Most of us have had that experience to where we've already gone down the path where we tried to tell our story and people looked at us like we lost our mind. So you know that already. So you have to adjust your approach. You can't communicate it in the same way. If you go back to that video I did with Cordell and Cordell, it's the same. What he talked about on how you deal with narcissistic people or MPD type issues, but you don't have a diagnosis and you don't have the money to push it. You focus on the behaviors. You say, man, this is the situation I'm dealing with, and you have to do it in a rational way. The problem is that you don't. It's like we have to be our own therapist, our own advocate, our own attorney, and to then deal with everyone else. We have to measure ourselves, modify our communication to where it's the most effective. But then you take a narcissistic personality type person who grew up that way. That's their base skill. Effectively, they learned that from childhood trauma most of the time, and had to figure out how to navigate the world. And they figured out that the best way, some people go down the people pleasing thing. It's like, how do I make everyone happy? How do I keep mom or dad happy so I don't get beat or not even so much even physical violence, but so that I get emotional support. So I don't get emotionally beat down. Cause that's damaging too. Personally, I think emotional abuse is almost worse than, or maybe is worse than physical abuse because you can't see it. A parent beats you and breaks your arm and puts cigarettes out on you. You can look at it and go, that's wrong. But when it's emotional and it's covert and it's cherry picking of times and sometimes they give you love and sometimes they don't, and you're trying to figure it out, it's like the wounds are invisible. It'd be similar if someone, finds a way to where they can beat you, but they don't leave a mark. And you go and oh, my parents beat me. And then you look at it and people are like, well, there's no marks. There's no, this person's saying that, but where's the evidence, And it's like, I was just at the parent teacher thing the other day and, your parents look great, right? Drives you crazy. John says they take their childhood trauma and imprint it on their kids with recreating their childhood in present. Major psychopath here. Yeah. I don't know. You guys are probably talking about something else in the comments, but the thing is It's like, how do you go from the edge of the cliff and come back? That's what this channel is about. That's what we're trying to accomplish here, is to give you guys the knowledge and the background so that you can effectively navigate this in the best you can. Does that mean everything's going to be successful? No. These are crappy situations. I mean, I made the best of my situation, but it's a crappy situation. The base case scenario would have been for me to have full custody, the mom to have limited custody, limited interaction to limit the damage. All of my kids have issues as a result of this nightmare that are following them into life. I'm hopeful still that they all will be able to learn from this and not repeat the same mistakes. But it's a messed up situation. When children have to compete for a parent's attention, to play games and can't be themselves, or worse, they lash out and they try to do other things just to get someone to recognize them so that they feel loved, they feel like they're finally accepted. It's a mess. I mean, and those wounds follow you into adulthood. The best we can do is be the solid foundation for them, give them an alternate view or possibility in life. If we were still in these messes, then they would still think this is normal. When you're out, then hopefully we can demonstrate, hey, there's another way. But it's tough because if you get gaslit, and forced to make, or not forced to make, but you end up making decisions that don't help, then it just keeps everything going. Thanks for checking out this clip from the Break the Cycle with DSD podcast. I do this show live every Monday through Friday at 6 a.m. Pacific time. If you want to catch a full show, tune into this channel, subscribe, and hit the like button. Or you can find the podcast version on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, or your other favorite podcast directories. Hope to see you on the next show.